Hello everybody, welcome back to Pinetree Wood. This is what's in the wood in May. It's a little bit late as I'm recording this now in the first week of July, but it's been quite busy. The camera recorded quite a lot of captures over May, too many to include in one video, so I've had to do quite a lot of thinning out. So I've just picked out a few highlights from across the month, things that have caught my interest, maybe some bit more unusual behaviours by some of the animals and birds, but just things a little bit out of the ordinary from what I normally see. The first capture was Tips the cat, waiting near the vacant mouse burrow. Of course he should know why it's empty. Three hours later, Holly the hedgehog was seen by the pond. Towards the end of the day, Cherry, the other hog, was sniffing around the pond and headed towards the thorny olive tree. The pigeon was trying to work out how to get onto the bird table after I surrounded it with sticks. These were to allow only the small birds to feed. Later that evening, Bandit the cat made an appearance, heading down the wood. The next morning, there was one of the magpies by the pond. It had worked out it could get between the twigs on the bird table. The pigeon was still determined to get to the table seed, and it half managed, clinging and flapping furiously while eating the seed at the edge of the table. It must have used more energy than the seed would provide. May also saw the return of hares to the wood. This capture is from the morning of the 11th. I think they're hares based on the ear and tail markings. Overnight rain hadn't yet evaporated from the camera lens. The downside of the hares is they've been eating the plants that I've been adding to the wood. In the last half hour of the 11th, Midnight the cat showed up behind the pond. The cat hung around for a few minutes and then left, heading back down the wood. A few hours into the 12th, Smudge, the female fox, came into view, walking down the wood. The fox's fur looked wet, yet it hadn't been raining. She marked her territory before moving off. Around dawn on the 12th, there was more action from the hares. Later that day, Tuxedo the cat showed up and spent some time sitting in the wood. I was very surprised on the 13th to see a sparrowhawk land in the wood, complete with its prey. I've seen birds of prey flying around the fields nearby and occasionally on the neighbouring hedges. However, this was the first time I'd seen one in the garden, never mind landing right in front of the trailcam. The camera recorded it for a full minute, but it was gone before the next recording started. This was the first of two big surprises for me. Magpies and pigeons made up many of the captures in May. On the 16th, they caught a pair of magpies, one of which was missing all of its tail feathers. Surprisingly, it didn't stop it from flying, and it was seen many times over the next few days hopping around the wood looking for food, but the camera did see it flying in and out. The hares were back on the 17th, and were often seen eating or chewing the bark of the thorny olive tree. The tailless magpie was back again, and was often seen around the pond. May also saw visits increasing from several jackdaws. They were often seen as a pair, but there have been up to 5 on the lawn at one time. Ironically, just after midnight on the 18th, Midnight the cat came down the wood, his eyes catching the infrared LEDs first. 3 hours later, Cherry the hedgehog was seen eating some seed and banana that I put out by the pond. Around dawn, the hare was back in the wood. I don't know if it was spooked by something off camera. Overnight on the 20th, Bandit the cat passed up the wood. I'm guessing the cats go hunting in the fields in front of my house. On the 22nd, there were more hare visits. It was usually seen not far from the olive tree, and normally left the side of the wood, heading towards the farm fields. They are moderately bold, but sudden movements, such as a magpie arriving, will startle them. A little before 6 a.m, it was time for hare zoomies. Many pet owners will know about zoomies, and it turns out the hares are no different. I don't know what causes the behaviour, but I'm guessing this is where the English phrase "mad as a March hare" comes from. Since taking the hanging feeder down, the number of small birds in the wood has dropped off. The camera did catch this bluetit having a quick dip in the pond. During the evening of the 22nd, a leveret was seen. It is significantly smaller than the adult hares usually seen in the wood. The following evening, I got some DSLR photos of the barn owl that often hunts in the fields in front of the house. Bandit passed through in the early hours of the 24th. The hare and the leveret were back in the wood a few hours later, starting with the hare. Soon after the leveret, a female blackbird dropped in to visit the pond for a dip. She stayed for around a minute before leaving. The camera turned off soon after. The next day, the adult hare was back again, and around an hour later, the leveret also returned. It spent some time in the wood before heading out through the laurel hedge towards the farm fields. On the 26th, the hare and the leveret were back again. The hare's ears are just visible in the bottom of the camera frame. Half an hour later, the pair had moved further up the wood. Late on the 26th, Basil the rat made another appearance. He seems to be a rare visitor, perhaps once a month. He stopped for a drink at the pond and wasn't seen again after the camera finished its 1-minute recording. A couple of hours later, not long after 1 a.m, Bandit the cat turned up. He hung around the wood for some time, though I haven't included all of the video clips. An hour later, Bandit and Cherry had a face-off, both surprising each other. They gave up and went their own way. Two blackbirds and the leveret also had a standoff at the pond, and again both surprised each other. After that, they went about their own business. Late evening on the 27th, Tuxedo the cat made a brief appearance. A little over an hour later, Cherry the hedgehog came to the pond for a drink. At 2 a.m. on the 28th, a new young fox showed up. I think this is another female that I've named Shady due to the markings on the fur. The following day, Tuxedo passed up the wood and sat down by the former mouse burrow. At dawn on the 29th, a bluetit came to the pond, but it was doing a lot of wing flapping. I don't know what this behaviour means. Tuxedo was back just after 3 a.m. on the 30th. He spent some time watching the burrow again before moving on. The biggest surprise of the month came an hour later, when a deer wandered into the wood and checked out the pond and camera. In 5 years of living here, I've never seen a deer in any of the surrounding fields, so it was a huge surprise to see one in my own little woodland. A few hours later, the hare was back. At the same time, the wood saw its first bullfinch visit, with the bird landing by the pond. Shortly after, a second bullfinch flew in. Judging by the markings, it's a male and female pair. The hare had another Zoomy session at 7:30 on the 30th. Shady the fox made another brief visit a few minutes before midnight on the 30th. Cherry the hedgehog was the last visitor for the month. Thanks for watching. Do consider giving me a like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.